Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and tonight I'll be talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, directed by Rennie Harlin, produced by Robert Shea and Rachel Talalay, and starring Robert Englund, Lisa Wilcox, Danny Hassel, Tuesday Knight, Ken Sagos, and Rodney Eastman. Distributed by New Line Cinema, and of course based on characters by Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner. This is a direct sequel to 1987's A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, meaning this was released in summer 1988. Basically, this movie is a blockbuster. It was made for $6.5 million and grossed over $49.4 million, making it the highest-grossing Nightmare on Elm Street movie until Freddy vs. Jason in 2003. Many people consider this the MTV Nightmare on Elm Street, and it honestly makes a whole bunch of sense. This is a very colorful, loud, in-your-face, has some edge, has some, not really grit, but it's got some attitude. It's zany, it's wild, and it's definitely a product of the 80s. So yeah, MTV Nightmare on Elm Street definitely fits a title for this one. Interesting note about the director, Rennie Harlin. Some of you may know he did Die Hard 2, which is one of my favorite action sequels. He did Cliffhanger. He did the action horror film Deep Blue Sea. He's even done some more conventional horror movies like Prison. He also did Mindhunters, which more of a thriller but horror elements, not a very good one. He did The Exorcist: The Beginning, which had its good parts but was kind of flawed, especially because Dominion was coming out at the same time. And then he's also slated to be doing the new Strangers trilogy coming out, I think, this year, which hopefully he does a good job with those, because the second Strangers, I think Strangers Pray at Night or whatever it was called, was fucking garbage. But anyway, back to Elm Street 4. Some of you may be thinking, why didn't you pick Dream Warriors? Why didn't you pick the first one? Hell, why didn't you pick New Nightmare or Freddy vs. Jason? And to be honest, I was actually going to do Shaun of the Dead today, but I figured it would be a better movie to do with like the boys when they come down, like Monster and Phantom, so I kind of put that one on the back burner. And I figured I'd jump into a slasher movie, but not just any, one of like the major slashers. Nightmare on Elm Street has always been one of my favorite of the major slasher films. It's one of those movies that I can marathon the whole series and not really feel jet lag or burned out from it. And what I mean by that is, like, when you watch one of these franchises, like, I don't know, Halloween or Friday the 13th, for example, you got like a big fucking chunk of movies to get through. And in my opinion, with something like Friday the 13th, like, there's more shit ones than there are good ones. So you're going to be spending a lot of your time just kind of groaning and waiting for it to be over until you get to the next one. Whereas Nightmare on Elm Street, in my opinion, there isn't really a bad movie in this series. They're all very unique. The kills are all very crazy, very fun, and you can just get through all of them, including the remake, in one sitting and not really feel like a bag of shit after, you know what I mean? I mean, at least with me, like, I enjoy pretty much all of them, even the 2010 one. But specifically Part 4, I think I've seen the most times. Like, I think 4 and 6 are the two I've seen the most out of the sequels. And 6 is something I want to save for another time. Basically, like, I picked 4 because I picked something that I was familiar with and something that I've seen a decent amount of time, and maybe something that would open the door to a future marathon series. Like, hopefully down the road, after we do a couple more of the marathon episodes, we'll get to a bigger series, and I really hope we get to do Nightmare on Elm Street. But for now, I'll just cover this one. Some more background on it. I remember, like, this is one of the oldest DVDs in my horror collection. I think Nightmare on Elm Street was one of the first franchises I got every single movie and completed. So it's always held a special place in my heart. And, the poster too. I mean, all the posters on these Elm Street movies are fucking amazing. If you guys have a chance, pause this video and search up the Nightmare on Elm Street poster by Matthew Peak. This guy, man, like, all these posters were fucking so cool. They were always on the spines of the VHS boxes and shit. And it just draws you in. Like, it's just so colorful and weird and trippy, and it's a perfect vibe for the movie. And one of the other things too is, I remember when I was a kid, like in the Blockbuster days, everyone was talking about, well, at least when I was like in 2nd or 3rd grade, all the kids were talking about Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, because like Freddy vs. Jason just came out. So I'd be there like in the background listening to these kids talking about these movies, and I'd hear like kills and scenes described. Scenes and kills that I would later find out would be part of the originals and sequels and shit. But, it kind of all blended into one. But I remember this one older kid told me about Nightmare on Elm Street, and his description of it was Freddy kind of goes into your dreams as a brain surgeon and kills you. Now, that never really happened in this series, but something like that something similar to that vibe, like Freddy in a hospital killing you, does happen in this movie, funny enough. So, I got a lot of memories with this series. It's to some it has its ups and downs. Dream Warriors is a high to everyone. Everyone says Dream Warriors is the one that saved the franchise, which it pretty much did. Like part 2 now in retrospect is getting more of a cult status, which is cool, but like when it came out 2 was very misunderstood. No one knew how to pin it, and a lot of people to this day don't even really like it. So that almost killed the franchise. Dream Warriors came along, and then from that point on, you got Dream Master, Dream Child. 6 was originally supposed to be called the Dream Lover until they called it Freddy's Dead. But what happens with the Freddy character is for the first 2 movies, he's kind of like a menacing, scary character, which works, right? And then in part 3, he's about like that for the first half of the movie. And then the second he says, "Welcome to primetime, bitch," and smashes the chick's face into the TV screen, he flips into like comedic jester one-liner Freddy, which I have no problem with one-liner Freddy, but like I always felt like 3 was kind of overhyped. I saw this one though. I saw 4 before I saw 3, so I could be part of it, but I always felt like the tonal switch in 3 just didn't really sit well with me, whereas like 1 is a straight up horror movie, 4 is more like a horror comedy fantasy, like, not really comedy, but it's lighter than the first one, like way lighter than the first one. 3 kind of does a balancing act where like the first half it's serious, and then like I said, it gets goofy, and I never felt the balance really worked. That's why I always liked 4 more, because it kind of just went full into the insanity, and I just loved it. Like, I mean, I liked 4 and 6 for Christ's sake, so that just shows you what kind of shit I like in these movies. But yeah, like I got some great memory. Like the kills in this movie are fucking amazing. Like the waterbed kill, the junkyard kill, the fucking the robot hand turning into the suck face kill, like the Roach Motel. Like so many good memories. Like I think this is one of the first movies where I caught like a full glimpse of titty too, which was pretty sick. And I think this is the first Elm Street movie to show titties in it. So big ups Rennie Harlan for doing that. Got some sickle itties in the water. It's a new high for Elm Street, boys. But yeah, no, this movie is great. I really do love this one. A quick rundown of the plot. I don't really want to spoil it. I feel like, most of you horror fans have seen these, but on the off chance you haven't and you want to watch them, I'll try to spoil as little as possible. But basically, the 3 survivors from Elm Street 3, Kristen, Kincaid, and Joey, have been released from Weston Hills, and they're put back into like their normal lives in Springwood with their families, going back to school and everything. However, Kristen is more than certain Freddy's going to come back and kill them. Now, Joey and Kincaid want a normal life. They just want to forget about it and move on. Her boyfriend Rick is supportive, but you can tell he's kind of heard enough about the Freddy thing where he listens to her, but he doesn't necessarily believe her. You know what I mean? Like, he loves her, so he'll listen to her, but he doesn't necessarily believe it's happening. You get Rick's sister Alice, who becomes the main character of this movie, and then you get their friends Sheila and Debbie. Sheila being a math nerd, and Debbie being like a butch, like weightlifting, like hates bugs chick. And then you get Dan, who's the jock that Alice has a crush on. That makes up the new Elm Street kids. Pretty quickly in this movie, the 3 survivors from fucking Dream Warriors get murdered. Like, first it's Kincaid, then it's Joey, then it's Kristen. Kincaid's death is fucking wild. He basically... They go back to the... Well, he gets sent back to the spot where Freddy was buried at the end of part 3. And his dog, Jason, funny that... pisses a stream of fire where Freddy's bones are, causing him to resurrect, almost like Frank from Hellraiser. And I swear to God, they had to have lifted this from Hellraiser. I'm not mad. I'm always down for a cool reanimation sequence, a good gore sequence, and this one is pretty cool, but it definitely looked like from Hellraiser. I mean, like, his bones start getting viscera and flesh and muscle on them, and then he resurrects, kills Kincaid in the junkyard, and then he kills Joey in the waterbed. That one, okay, again, first titty shot of the movie, so I got to cover it. Basically, Joey's sitting in his room listening to tracks like Johnny Depp on the bed in the first movie, staring at his fucking pinup poster. Then the chick on the poster disappears, and then he hears something or feels something in the bed. He pulls the cover, and he sees her big old itties looking him in the face, and she's telling him to come in the bed to go after her. And Joey's like, oh, fuck yeah. But Freddy rips through the bed, ruins it, and goes, how is this for a wet dream? And fucking drowns him in the bed. And then we move on to Kristen, who's the only one left. She finds out the next day her 2 friends, the only 2 that can believe her and what's going on, who have been killed by Freddy. She completely wigs out, as one would, because she knows that like no one really believes her. They're kind of just humoring her, you know what I mean? And everyone's kind of just like putting up with it. And she basically takes these new Elm Street kids and her boyfriend to the Freddy house, where Rick pretty much tells Dan. And I never got why Dan kind of tagged along, because, you know, like Rick is like this karate, like super into karate, Christian Slater from Heathers looking dude, like basically a school shooter who loves karate. And Dan is like the guy that would be beating the shit out of him if it was any other movie, but he just comes along, and he's actually a pretty solid dude in this movie. He's not a typical douchebag, which is a nice change up. But they all go to the Elm Street house. They get the rundown on what's going on, who Freddy is, what exactly he did, until Kristen's mom pulls back and fucking takes her home. Kristen's mom drugs her with sleeping pills, like a fuck, and then basically she freaks out again, saying like, look mom, you killed me. She runs upstairs, passes out, and then basically what happens is Freddy goads her into bringing another friend, like a new Elm Street kid, in to basically open the door for Freddy, like open the slaughter factory for him on the new Elm Street kids, which she inadvertently does. Alice is there the whole time, watches Kristen get killed, but when this happens, we find out Alice is able to absorb Kristen's power. And for those of you who haven't seen Dream Warriors, basically the kids in the mental hospital have all been able to survive Freddy from a power they have in their dreams, like a manifestation of their inner true being, their true power, basically. And that's how they were able to, like, you know, keep Freddy at bay or fight him. Now, Kristen's power was being able to pull people in dreams. Kincaid's strength, Joey, I don't remember. I don't really care. But basically, Kristen gives this power on to Alice. Now, Alice has some dream capabilities of her own. Throughout the whole movie, we see her daydreaming things. Like, there's scenes that we think play out the way that they'd go, but there's how she would like them to play out in her head. So she's a constant daydreamer. And there's even a point where she tells Kristen about this nursery rhyme her mom taught her whenever she had nightmares, called The Dream Master. They said the thing in the movie. They said the title. And it's basically like this now I lay me down to sleep type thing, where if she says it, her mom comes and saves her and she's good. Now, all the original Elm Street kids at this point are dead, so we're left with Alice, Rick, Dan, Sheila, and Debbie. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I'm pretty fried right now. But basically, they all get killed. How this happens is, shit. Again, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry here, guys. Sheila falls asleep during a math test, and she wakes up to this weird, like, pen dripping blood and a robot hand coming out of the desk, only to have Freddy slide right up to her, and he basically goes like, do you want to suck face? And because this chick's an asthmatic, he sucks like all the living will and air out of her fucking lungs, turning her to like a skeleton. She dies in class. They think it's a fucking asthma attack. Alice saw the whole thing, and she's trying to tell Rick, her brother, like, look, I saw it, like, Freddy's killing people. Rick doesn't want to hear it. He's too overcome by grief about Kristen's death, and he's more like concerned at the idea that like she's sounding like Kristen now ever since she died, saying all this similar eerie shit, and he's like, look, she went crazy, I don't want you to go crazy too. Yeah, so it's basically like pretty bummy. And I mean, their home life isn't too great to begin with. They got like an alcoholic dad, the mom ran away or something, so it's really just the two of them. And Rick, you can tell he's really upset about the whole fucking thing. There's a cool scene, like I said, with imagery. Like, this movie feels kind of neon at points. Like, there's a part where like they walk away, and then there's just this giant claw mark down one of the lockers with like a pinkish red glow coming out of it. Another example of the really 80s neon imagery, like super like MTV-ish, I guess, vibes. Really cool shit. But anyway, Rick is the next one to go. Basically, he falls asleep on the toilet in the school bathroom, and then he gets surrounded by a bunch of cheerleaders, and then he gets put in a elevator of sorts, and the door opens to one of the cheapest kills in the entire movie. What I think happened is they might have ran out of money, the budget got a little slim or whatever, and this kill, you don't actually see Freddy. It plays on Rick loving karate and shit. So what happens is he goes to fight Freddy in this like dojo in the sky, and it's just a glove floating around going at him, and Rick ultimately loses. He gets stabbed and dies. So now there's just Alice and her shit dad and Dan and fucking Debbie. And when I forgot to mention this, when Sheila died, she basically acquired the logic that this girl had, like the smarts that she had. Rick's dead, she's gonna inherit the karate. You know, it's just wild shit. It's so 80s. But anyway, what ends up happening is we also get little glimpses of Alice's life. Like, she works at this dead-end diner with Debbie, And I think that's how she starts talking to Rick more, and how he, like, starts becoming more friendly with her. But like, her main fear is that she's going to be at this restaurant her whole life. And there's another great scene where she's at a movie theater, and I think they're watching Reefer Madness, and the movie turns into The Diner but in black and white, and she gets sucked into the screen, and she's there, and Freddy's eating a pizza with all these souls of people he killed as little meatballs. And the old lady taking the order is an old version of Alice, and it like freaks her out. You get another trippy dream sequence when Dan finally decides to help her. I swear to God, to this day, it still gets me. It got me when I was a kid, and it still gets me. There's a part where they're running to go get Debbie, because they're like, okay, they're the only ones left. They need to fight Freddy now that they have an idea of how to stop him. And they basically go to get Debbie, and the movie loops like 2 or 3 times. And like, it's Freddy fucking with the outside world as his power gets stronger. But as a kid, it's like one of those things I didn't notice. And even when I'm really baked watching this movie, I don't notice it. I think my DVD is skipping, and it fucks with me. But that's pretty cool, showing how his power can influence the outside world. They get into a car crash because Rick falls asleep behind the wheel. So you're left to think maybe he's the next to die. And that's where we get the sick, like, hospital image Freddy. The quote-unquote brain surgeon Freddy, if you want to call him that. Meanwhile, Alice is trying to get to Debbie. Debbie's pumping iron. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, she's got a fear of bugs. So basically what happens is Freddy pushes the barbell or the bench press down on her, and her arms fucking split, and these like bug-like tendrils come out of the skin, and she starts turning into a roach. And then her feet get stuck to like this gooey ground, and then her face, and it rips all of her skin off and turns her into a giant cockroach. And then we cut to see that she's in this little roach motel that Freddy's holding, and he fucking squishes it. Again, one of my amazing kill in this movie. The effects work in this movie was fucking phenomenal. Like, they don't do it like this anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so gross but so cool. Like, oh man, fucking great shit. Anyway, so we're left thinking like Rick's going to be the next one to die. He gets pulled out. And then basically Alice decides, okay, enough's enough. Like, she fucking basically gears up with all this shit, all these little pieces of things from her friends. She gets Rick's like Japan bandana and nunchucks. She gets fucking the metal studded bracelet that Debbie has. She gets the bug zapper that Sheila made for Debbie. All these little pieces of the people that she's absorbed in a way, and she goes in to save Dan from Freddy. This results in them showing up in an old church where she gets Dan, and she's getting ready to pull him out, only to get one showdown with Freddy. This results in the fucking duel, basically, between the Dream Master and Freddy. And Freddy's death in this is a lot cooler than the third movie. In the third movie, they sprinkle some fucking pissy holy water on him. He spins in 3 circles and then just turns into bones. I fucking always hated that fucking death. Again, that's part of the reason why I don't really like 3. I like 4 more. I think like the second half of 3 is just shit. Like, no offense to you fucking Dream Warriors fanboys out there, but it's just shit, right? In this one, all the souls of people Freddy's killed are like bursting at the seams trying to get out of him, like fucking arms coming out of his head holding him in one place. We get another titty shot, and funny enough, for all you guys who know your titties and know your horror scream queens, I think that might be Leanna Quigley. I could be wrong there, but I heard somewhere that it's her with the soul with tits coming up Freddy's chest, and they basically rip him apart. The movie ends with Alice and Dan walking and talking about what will come in the future. We see Freddy's reflection to know, yeah, there's going to be another one. And that's Elm Street 4. It's something, man. It's cool. Like, I really like this movie. Like, again, I can't really find much to shit on about it. Maybe not a lot of you will agree with me. Some of you, again, will think I'm fucked for thinking it's better than Dream Warriors. But I don't know. This is just one of those ones where, again, I feel just nostalgia when I watch it. It just takes me back to a better, easier time, the Blockbuster days. You know what I'm saying? And for that, I'll always love this movie. Some more facts here before I wrap it up and give this movie a rating. This movie has like 3 taglines, I'm pretty sure. Now, on the original poster by Matthew Peak, if you guys, pause, check it out. I highly recommend that. All these Elm Street movie posters, by the way, are fucking great. But on the poster for Dream Master, it says "Terror Beyond Your Wildest Dreams." But on the DVD that's in front of me right now, it says "Pure Evil Never Really Dies." And on IMDb, it says the tagline is, "You shouldn't have buried me. I'm not dead." Now, I always thought that was fucking hilarious because I'm pretty sure Serpent in the Rainbow came out either a year before this or it came out just before at the same time as this. So I feel like it's kind of like a little in joke at Wes Craven, because in Serpent in the Rainbow, after Bill Pullman gets dosed with the zombie powder and he stumbles around and lands on the ground, he looks at everyone, he's like, "Don't let them bury me, I'm not dead." And I don't know, maybe that was a joke at like Wes Craven, because he used to do the Elm Street movies, like he created it, and they were kind of like tying it back there as a reference. I mean, like, I think this because for Christ's sakes, the bar Alice works at is called the Crave Inn. So, Craven, like, so like I thought maybe that was it. And I mean, another funny thing about Bill Pullman, I swear to God, every horror movie this guy's in, whether it's Serpent in the Rainbow, Brain Dead, or even Lost Highway, I think he does it. He says something along the lines of like, "Don't do this, I'm not dead." So like, I always thought that was funny. Another thing, I mean, there's not much, like I said earlier, I don't think I could really shit on this movie too much because I enjoy it so much, but I mean, there are points to it that aren't that good, mainly the Rick kill. But on a funny note about that, when he's like in the elevator and steps out to the Dojo of Death, you can hear like a Japanese rendition of the Elm Street theme playing, which is pretty fucking jokes. And like, Kincaid's dog's name is Jason, which is like, Friday the 13th was a popular like series at the time. And even when this movie came out, like fucking in 88, basically you had Elm Street releasing this, you had Friday the 13th 7 come out, and you had Halloween 4 come out. And all of them reached number 1. So that just shows you times were way better back in the day. Yeah, no, I fucking really love this movie. It's really fun. It's a really good, like, 80s movie. It's one of those ones that you can just throw on, you know what I mean? Well, at least for me, I just throw it on when I really can't think of anything to watch. If I want to watch something familiar but have a good time, I usually go for that. I'm going to give this movie a rating. Like, I'm going to try to separate it from the Elm Street series. I know it's hard because this is the 4th movie in the series, but I'm going to try to separate it because I can rate this as a movie on its own, but to rate it as an Elm Street movie would be different because there's obviously ones that are way better, and I want to save that for a possible marathon with Phantom and Monster one day. Hopefully we can relive the middle school days and slam out all fucking 9 of these things and then do a proper review of each Elm Street movie. So I'm going to try to separate it from the series and just rate it on its own merits. Yeah, as like a late 80s slasher movie, this one's fucking good. Like, I really enjoy this one. It's the 4th movie in a series. So, like, and it's crazy because you expect with sequels for them to get worse and shit, but this one's good. Like, even if you see this as your first Freddy movie, like, there's so much to this movie that, like, fucking, like, there's so much of this movie is in the cultural zeitgeist. Like, for example, like, that "how sweet fresh meat" line comes from this one. They've even said a similar line in a fucking Tiny Toons Halloween special. Like, this movie had such a big impact. Like, it caused the Freddy's Nightmare show to come out in 1988. This movie, like, I don't even know. Like, there's just so much to it. It's just a really well done big budget slasher movie. Like, there was a lot of slashers coming out in the 80s, and like the late 80s was really when the period was starting to die, and I think this is one of the last bangs of that era. It's got great set piece designs, it's got some really great memorable kills. Like, it's cool. And I mean, some of the cinematography, I mentioned it earlier, there's this scene where there's like this giant claw mark down the fucking lockers and this red glow coming out of it. Looks super cool. The waterbed kill, the boiler room. One criticism I will give it is the boiler room looks a little too Hellraiser, kind of like the reanimation of Freddy, but it's not bad. You know what I mean? Like, you could do a lot worse, especially with something as oversaturated as the slasher genre. 1988, not to knock the year, there was a lot of really cool shit coming out, but truthfully speaking, that's when everything started like kind of dying down. We get the stagnation that a lot of people talk about in the 1990s. Basically, people were hitting burnout around this point with slasher movies. But I don't know, man. As a horror fan, like, I fucking love this movie. I love pretty much anything in the genre, good or bad. But as like, an average moviegoer, as someone who's like not as seasoned into horror movies or something, I feel like someone like that would enjoy this movie because it's got a very popcorn movie feel to it. It's like a fun, like, roller coaster ride in a way. And, if you really like the 80s vibe, if you really like the MTV aesthetic, I recommend this for you. It's it's nothing too serious, it's nothing too heavy to digest. It's got a couple like deep moments here and there, like with Alice's at home life, but it's not overwhelming, it's not moody, it's just a fun movie. They really don't make them like that anymore. And the fact that this was a mainstream movie back in the day, it's crazy, and it bums me out because I wish I was alive back then to see that, like, these versions of mainstream movies as opposed to the mainstream movies coming out nowadays. Definitely not a terrible movie. And now to get into my rating system for this, which is going to be kind of weird, but bear with me. Like I was saying, I really want to marathon these movies with Phantom and Monster one day, so I'm going to have to kind of separate this movie from the general series, which sounds kind of weird. But basically what that means is, like, just because I really enjoy this one personally doesn't mean this is one of the best ones in the entire series, right? So, like, I could rate this a really high rating now, but I could give it a middling rating compared to the other movies in the series. So this rating is going to serve as my own personal one for just this one by itself, but it could be totally different for the overall series. So my solo rating for just A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, for, like, and this may be kind of biased, but I'd personally have to give it about an 8.5 or a 9. Very fun movie. Definitely doesn't drag on. It doesn't wear out its welcome. It's got, like, scares. It's got action. It's got decent acting. Like I didn't hate anybody in this movie. It flowed really well. It was a great continuation. You could watch this movie by itself and still have a fun time, I think. And yeah, I recommend this to anybody who's, like, super into 80s slashers, into the MTV aesthetic. Like, if you just like all that kind of stuff, you're going to be in for a good time with this one. So yeah, for that, I'd have to give it about an 8.5 or a 9. Again, this rating could be subject to change after reviewing the whole series, but you never know. Hope to see you guys there. If you like this episode, drop a like, comment, or subscribe if you haven't done that already. One thing we're hoping to do soon is get recommendations covered. So far, we already got recommendations for the Toxic Avenger and Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead. We're going to get started on the Poultrygeist one as soon as possible. But yeah, if you guys got any more movies you want us to check out, if you want me to check out, if you want Monster or Phantom to check out, drop a comment. Feel free. We got bare movies to go through. Maybe we got one of the ones you recommend. And hell yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good night. Burn one for me. Laters.